Good evening, traders. It's Monday, and this is Krishna Joshi here for 7 Points Capital. I'm here with Stan from the Florida office, and I'm really excited to do this video. It's been a while, and it's my first video of 2018. So I'm gonna jump right into a few setups from today. Decent day, was a great start. Had a few wonderful setups, something that I really like to trade, which is takeouts, and especially the high priced ones, if they're even better if they're getting taken out at a huge premium. So before we dive into those stocks, let's look at S&P 500. As you all know, finally the markets were down 0.6%, and it's the worst day since early September. So that's something to keep in mind. Look at this daily chart. Massive strength. Finally a day where it kind of pulls back. The futures opened really weak yesterday, like we're up marginally, but today, like you can see, pre-market action was weak, so finally a day when it opens down. And we saw some sell-off right in the morning. A few stocks were in play from Friday. Intel, which had earnings, Ford, but I want to jump into a few stocks that really work for me. The market did close pretty weak. As you can see, SPY's kind of sold off. UEXY, or the VIX in general, was really strong. So it was up about 10% on the day, even though SPY's were just down. S&P 500, you can see the news flashing on the screen on the TV that says that there's someone who's buying massive quantities of these VIX call options. The huge big market players are expecting that VIX is going to eventually turn around, and today was one of the days that it finally closed weak. Usually if you'd see a few months back, every time it would make a new high, it would kind of pull back slightly, but this is a really extended move on S&P 500. But intraday it did give a lot of opportunities. So if you guys have heard me before, I usually break down my videos into 3 segments: good trades, bad trades, and should have done better. So the first stock on the good trade is Ford. This was pretty active, good volume going on. Last few days you can see, even after earnings, pretty good volume, a dividend announcement of 15 cents, and the stock kind of just readjusted 15 cents, the close, but it was definitely weak all day. Mike had an amazing setup last week in Ford, and we kind of saw a similar continuation pattern in Ford, where the stock is weak, kind of selling off all morning. I was involved pretty late, not right in the morning, so I was trading it around the 20s. I remember buying the 21s here. Was getting emphasized because I really had a feel for it, interacting with a lot of block prints while I was trying to buy the 21s. The 22 offer wasn't that strong. I added some more at 22 and kind of held it, but it kind of quickly came back down. And you can see a lot of, if you see the volume profile around here, massive volume traded between 25 and 20, this level, the 5-6 cent range. Definitely a lot of volume. All day it was weak, below VWAP. The ideal trade for me was have a decent average position, good entry, which I did have a decent entry on Ford, and my price target was about 4 to 5 cents. I was hoping it would retest close to VWAP. The SPYs were kind of pulling back around that time, wasn't at the low of the day, so I felt like this was a pretty good buy, where 20s had a tough time breaking down. But eventually the sellers took over. The stock was pretty weak, ended up being pretty much a break-even trade for me, but I kept watching it constantly because I had a feel for the stock. I'd been watching it for a while, and I got short in the 20s and kind of added some more position around the 70s. This one was an easy trade to hold. The best part about it was you were in the direction of the big picture trend, and even on the short term, when you could see like the volume kind of picked up right around after 3 o'clock, and the seller kind of picked up too. So it was a good trade in the end, where you could do decent size, you could hold it for a decent move, and the risk reward was amazing on it, where once you knew that the 20s were going, the 19s were taken out easily. It ended up being a pretty good risk reward setup where you're risking half a cent to 1 cent practically, and ended up getting, because I remember getting a decent mid-price entry around the 20 and halves, and I was practically risking half a cent to 1 cent, given the weakness in the stock. Ended up being a pretty good 6 to 1, 7 to 1 kind of risk reward setup. So Ford was the first stock. The second good stock on the day was ALDR for me. Uh, I was involved on the short side all day, pretty much all day. Stan pointed out the stock. He was trading it pretty well. One of the weakest stocks on the day. If you look at the daily though on the chart, this was massive weakness, phase 2, phase 3 failure, and then a couple of big brokerage firms are defending the stock. The stock did pretty well on the JP Morgan Healthcare conference as well, but today we saw some correction coming into it. Volume finally coming back in the stock as well. So looking at intraday, I wasn't trading it right away at the open. I was in fact watching it around 11 o'clock, which is right around here, 1550 area. I felt like I was kind of chasing it because I was trading it. My entry price was kind of 10 cents below where it had traded most of the volume. So even though I got an entry price of 1550, it ended up working out pretty good. It worked out right away, which is why I was short bias for most of the day up until right around here, where I was watching it closely. The stock really had a tough time breaking through the 15 level. Even when it did, 1505 offer kind of really held. So that is what I was looking at it. Volume profile, really massive volume traded again between 1490 and 1505. And once the 90s kind of got taken out, it was an easy hold up until here. Waited for the pullback, added some around the 1480 level, but the stock didn't really want to go. In fact, the seller who was kind of pushing it down switched his sides to the buying side, and I was trading with the same algo on the opposite side. So I knew that the momentum had kind of shifted when when he put in this hammer bottom around 1470. Kind of tried to push it back to 1475, tried to break it, but definitely the bid was holding. There was a lot of selling that came in. All of that got absorbed, and the stock kind of flashed up, and it did another one of those attempts to fail and break the 1490s. Had failed, and that was it. So two short trades in ALDR, and then finally I didn't really get involved on the long side on either of this, but I was again waiting for a tight risk reward, and which is where we got involved around 1525. Stan was trading actively with this, trading this with me actively as well, and we ended up getting a good price around the 1525s. And for one of them was a pretty quick scalp. I really got out for most of my position for a quick scalp around here, but got a chance. I shorted the 1510s again, and probably got about 20 cents on this trade. This again goes down as a good trade because of the high risk reward. The probability of these kind of setups working out for me are pretty high too. So those were the two things I was looking at it. More than 80% success ratio on these kind of setups for me. And from the moment I was trading it, there weren't enough. There wasn't a time where I was out of money. So that was a good positive sign I was seeing. Shorted the 25s in the money right away. Covered some here, probably reshorted it again and in the money right away. So those are the kind of setups that obviously always seem to be the easier ones and give you more confidence to size up the next time you see them. Let's move on to one bad setup, which is STX. STX announced earnings pre-market. The stock was definitely weak. They've also had some mention regarding cryptocurrencies, and which is why they've been pretty active last few weeks. You can see a huge gap up on earnings. I think this is where around they increased the guidance, but at the same time they had a positive cryptocurrency mention. They have some sort of tie-up with Ripple, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see the stock is definitely near highs. It's way off the lows, which wasn't too long ago, which was right around September. The stock was trading around 30 bucks. So today we saw some weakness. Pre-market definitely strong, but sold off right at the open. And this is where I had been watching it. A lot of short trades didn't really work out, making lower highs. So all of these pops you're trying to get short below VWAP. Good setup if it would have made lower highs and lower lows continuation probably, but the stock kind of did not want to move at all. So ended up being a long setup. I did not jump in right away on the long side. Definitely a few failed attempts on the short side. Uh, I remember shorting the 5390s for a little bit right around here, where it was bouncing off the 5375 and 5370 area. Eventually, I turned long after it retested the 54, like it went through the VWAP, came right back around the 5420 area. This is where I got involved on the long side, which is around 5410 to 5415 area, right around this one. So this is where I got long. Probably got out a little early because of like I felt like it was testing, it was way above the VWAP. I felt like it could probably come back into the VWAP, and this is where I booked most of the profits. Definitely should have done much better with it, and it ended up really continuing higher. So two failed short attempts turned me long bias on the pullback after it broke through the VWAP, which ended up being a good trade initially, but it did have a massive move. It ended up going to 5550 area, and the reason why I say it's a bad setup for me, ended up being a bad stock for me because I missed the short entry. I ended up chasing it. I shorted the 40s right on this candle. I ended up chasing it at it should be here. So I shorted the 5540s. I added the 5531s right around this one. So definitely I was feeling bad about this trade. The initial conviction was, I know it's a short setup for me, but this is where I was trying to get it. So ended up chasing it right around here, which definitely on the pullback just shook me out, and I just ended up being a losing trade for me, even though the idea was put a stop above 55.60 and let it run. Ended up being a good trade for Stan, who was involved on the short side, but here you can see bad entry price can definitely mess with your head, and it can definitely have less conviction for the trade going in. So that's one thing I need to keep in mind. I've been trying not to chase a whole lot, but this one ended up being because of constantly being involved with the stock Ford. I was watching that constantly and ended up missing an entry price on this one. Should have been a good setup, and definitely don't want to chase it next time. The third segment, one stock that I want to do better is KS. There you go. It's getting taken out by WRK. Massive premium, like I mentioned. I like trading these kind of takeouts. And there you can see gaps up really huge, close to the takeout price, around 35, and just massive selling. So definitely we were short 34.89, which was right at the open, which was a great entry price to get short. 34.89 right at the open. That's the A plus takeout strategy for me. Works amazingly, fantastically well for a high market cap stock which is getting taken out on a huge premium. So definitely got short 34.89. Let it ride. The reason why I say I could have done better on this was I did not have my full size on it, partly because of the level 2. The depth on the level 2 did not really look that promising. It was 5 to 600 shares on both sides. Definitely gonna rewind the level 2 tape and see if I can really look at levels where I should have got involved with bigger size. Ended up taking around this mid 60s to 70 area. Ended up being a 20-cent trade with a tight risk reward. Was only initially risking about 4 to 5 cents. Got short around 89, trying to risk about 92, 93, which is where I saw a reserve offer right at the open. So definitely a good risk reward setup, but what I would like to do better is have much more size on this, because these are high conviction A++ setups for me. More like bread and butters. Every time there's a takeout, I'd love to jump onto these ones. I did a similar thing in DPS as well, which was a takeout again, more like a merger news with GMCR If you guys remember, GMCR used to be a traded company, Keurig. So definitely a similar pattern I could see in DPS, and absolutely fantastic. I missed the pre-market short at 32.70. I had that in my box. I had the wrong route, and that just did not go well. I ended up getting right at the open. That was a great trade again. Just did not have enough size on it, especially because I did not really expect stock to collapse like 20 points off the highs, from the pre-market highs. But definitely one of the strong setups. Great risk reward setups to more than 10 to 1 on the risk reward, because you're risking really 50-60 cents on it right around here, and it ended up being fantastic. Covered around the lows, right at the open in the wash, and I was definitely watching it over and over, because I was constantly watching the stock. 120 offer was holding, the 119s held, and this was another trade. This was like more like a quick scalp. I definitely had a lot of size on this one. As soon as I saw the 1850s break, which was right around here, and this was a quick cover though, quick cover for me, a similar setup around here. So there were two more trades where I got involved, but with size, but those were more like quick scalps. Right at the open, I'm usually watching for these kind of A plus setups for me on the M&A kind of stocks. So these are 5 stocks from me. Thanks again for watching, guys. Feel free to throw in your comments, and I'll be back with more videos. Thanks for watching.